Nice. Hello,
Mm,
hello. Welcome to the show, Melody.
thank you, Shannon. So wonderful to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to talk to you. I was sharing before the show how we've been talking about space and intentionality about escaping the quicksand and the weight of life, and how
Right.
to organize ourselves. So I'm super excited to have you as an organizational professional, and we'll introduce you in a second, but I think this is a great conversation for you to be here on.
I'm super excited. Yeah,
Beautiful. Y'all,
yeah.
today we are talking about social wellness and reconnect with now. I think we go ahead and start the show so we can have a full conversation with everybody up on stage. How do you feel about that, Melody?
That sounds great. Yeah,
Okay. Hey, y'all, I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon bestselling publisher, author, and all natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness. And here I had asked Melody a question about how she wanted this bio. So, Melody, what's your final answer? I have it here pulled up. You want me to read a short blurb, or would you prefer to introduce yourself to our leaders just improv right now?
I can introduce myself.
Love it.
So I am in my 70s. I have
Mm,
been organizing, helping people declutter and organize since my teen years.
hmm,
Um, and yes, I've had professional training, and I've also given professional organizer training.
hmm,
So, what I discovered about 27 years ago, as I was in the middle of a Kundalini yoga
hmm,
teacher certification,
hmm,
doing a lot of breath work, is that my natural sensitivity to homes and workspaces became more acute. And I started to see and smell and sense disturbances
hmm.
that I couldn't haul out to the dumpster. And that's when I did my 5 year space and personal clearing training and my feng shui training. And then about 5 years after that, my life coaching training.
Hmm.
And along the way, starting in my 30s, I've been working with the dying
Hmm.
to help set up the environment that's going to be the most supportive for the multi-layered processes, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual processes of death. And of course, I also now work with the
Hmm.
grieving. So if it's anything from birth to death, I can help create the environment that makes things flow with more ease and grace. So that's
Yeah.
me.
And so many of the reasons why I'm super excited to have you as one of the women connected in wisdom. You know, I didn't realize how much I enjoyed helping people with transitions until I was in college. And I was going through the resident assistant program, and they had asked did you know that I had done that?
I didn't know you were an RA.
Yes, yes. I didn't even know what a RA was when I started college, Melody. I
Oh,
was like, "An RA? That's two, weird letters to put together." Acronyms are a lot of words, y'all, like, you just put them together. But, the resident assistant program was amazing and helped me get through college, and so, thankfully, my tuition was completely paid for with scholarships and stuff, and then my room and board was taken care of, right? But this is why I have that relationship with the word free. We're talking about how to be present and what things cost, and free might still cost you something. So um I was realizing as they asked me which level, basically which grade I wanted to work with, I said freshman because I could help them transition from high school to college and kind of know the expectations, now as a sophomore. So I love that you help people through the different stages because we were looking it up last night, talking about you, speaking about your work and the different systems, and was reminded through our research, our bodies have 11 systems or more, depending on how you break it up. Just like the eight dimensions of wellness, we have eight,
right.
You could split emotional and mental. You could definitely split that. There is enough stuff to
Mhm.
talk about, and we'll talk
Yeah.
about some of it today with social wellness, right? So
Yeah.
I love that you help people with systems. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a good
Absolutely.
conversation. Is there
Yeah.
anything you wanted to add to that before we bring our guest up today?
Just that I'm so excited to be with Rachel today. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, it's going to be so good. Okay, let me get Rachel's bio because it looks like I have multiple tabs, y'all. Let's pull up the right information. No, no, I had melodies and Rachel's is missing. Give us one moment, please, y'all. So we can make sure we bring our guest up correctly. I'm gonna search it again. So, Melody, while I get this up so we can
Mhm.
appropriately introduce our guest, would you mind walking through our listeners through how spatial intelligence and wellness helps them with the grief and the sense that you
Oh,
can't take to the trash and the things that you were talking about because sometimes it's hard for people to put it together. And I'll bring up our guest after we read her bio.
yeah. So it's really important, I think, for people to realize that the environment, the land on which they live, and the home in which they live, and the space in which they work has a big impact, influence on them. It was Coach Jim Rohn who said, "We are a sum total of the five people we spend the most time with." And I would agree with that. And I would also agree that we want to include in that that we are a sum total of the five spaces in which we spend much of our time.
Wow.
And how do those spaces function? Meaning, are there systems? Is it
Mhm,
organized?
mhm,
How do those spaces feel? Meaning, is there a regular space clearing of the space to release the old memory and create
mhm,
spaciousness?
mhm.
And is there a good flow of chi? Meaning, is there good feng shui with the placement of things? Um, and at all of our life transitions, and with some of them, I think our culture is really good at
Mhm.
birth. We have baby showers,
Thank
we
you,
set up
right.
the newborn room,
Mhm,
weddings. But sometimes some of our other transitions, when a loss happens,
mm,
we don't know to create a grief
mm,
altar.
mhm.
We don't know to dedicate a shelf or a top of a dresser to honoring our grief process.
Right.
And and certainly when someone's dying or something is dying, we need to create a space that reflects what's happening and gives permission for the emotions to be in flow.
I love that, and especially talking about reconnecting with the now, you know? And I always forget if it was Kate Arms, I think it was one of our other guests, talked about a pity party and how she was so frustrated and upset with the situation she was going through with her diagnosis. She made a pill out of all of the prescriptions, right, and made it like a piñata, and me and my best friend did that for this situation with her mom's house after she passed away, you know? But what you're saying is, another actionable item that we can use. It doesn't always have to be a pity party, but it could be a pictures and little mementos and things that help anchor you into what's going on and honor that and say,
Right.
we're here now and we'll keep going, but right now, this is where we are.
Yeah.
So we have this bio, and that's where we were for the beginning of this podcast. Thank you so much, Melody.
Yeah.
Y'all, again, today we have an amazing guest. Our guest today is Rachel Heslin, and with over 4 decades of exploring psychology of identity and experience, Rachel loves helping people release old stories, retaining the integrity of their core essence so they can contribute to a more vibrant, compassionate, and collaborative world. She is the author of 2 books, and we'll talk about another one: Navigating Life, 8 Different Strategies to Guide Your Way and Rituals of Release, How to Make Room for Your New Life, and her TEDx talk, A Defense of Victim Mentality, Transforms Condemnation into Compassion in only 6 minutes. And I can tell y'all that this is definitely true. I listened to it earlier. It was amazing. Hi, Rachel.
Hello there. I just have to say, I love your voice.
Thank you
I'm
so
in the
much.
green room listening, and there's such a warm resonance to it. It's like, okay,
Mm.
this is good.
Thank you so
Anyway,
much.
hello.
Because we talk about difficult things, grief does not feel good all the time. I mean, when did it
Yeah.
feel good? When you look at the joy of it, sure, but you're not saying joy and grief at the same time. Those are, beside each other and things like that. So I'm super excited for our listeners to learn from you today, to learn from you ladies, and for us to have this conversation. Is there anything that you wanted to add with your expertise that we've been talking about while you were in the green room? How would you like to jump into what you have to offer our listeners?
Honestly, um, with the Melody had mentioned she was looking forward to talking with me. She and
Yes,
I have been connected for a while in very deep wisdom. And what I have noticed is when we start to talk, what needs to be shared just naturally emerges.
absolutely. And that's one thing I love about being present. And one thing we practice with Women Connected in Wisdom, is not a scripted conversation. It's just us at the table having a drink, having water, coffee, whatever you choose, and talking about what's going on right now. You know, um, I heard of I was gonna ask a question, but I heard a breath. Did anybody have anything they wanted to offer before I go to the next thing? Okay. So for me, I've been hearing a lot about embodied leadership, right? So when we talk about reconnecting with now and stop living in old stories, when you make it to the position of being a leader, a lot has already happened, right? You have your personal life, your stories, things that have happened in childhood. You have the things that you did to get to this position, whether it's education, different things, people the relationships. And now, as a leader, you have the responsibility of where you are, right? So when you're finally there and you've gone through this list of different things to get there, what does it mean to you ladies to be fully embodied in that? Because I see our leaders struggling with that. And I would love for people who show up with integrity, who are women connected in wisdom, who do the work like we do, but who might struggle with their identity, with imposter syndrome, or the weight of their responsibility. I want to help them be embodied. What does that look like to you, ladies?
I have a kind of unusual take on what imposter syndrome actually is that is
Okay,
directly related to embodiment.
beautiful.
In my observation and experience, imposter syndrome is an indication that we are not in flow.
Hmm.
When we pull back and we look at our situation and think, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing, or it's like the snapshot of what you think it should be or where you think you should be. That's all head stuff. And if you try to battle it directly and argue with that voice, you're still up in your head. However, if you take the time to become embodied, and I am going to, for the sake of my what I'm saying here, I'm defining embodiment as being fully present, where the brain weasels aren't running everything and you're just here and aware and responsive, then you're engaged. And when you are engaged in a moment, you don't have time to worry about all the other stuff. The am I doing it right? Therefore, it's so important to recognize when the stories are popping up. You talked about when you reach leadership. What I have found for myself is that life is spirals. I am constantly learning and growing. And every time I up level, I hit the same stories. Fortunately, I've done so much work over the years that when my enoughness story comes up, because that's my personal flavor, is whether or not I can do or be enough. When it comes up again, I can look at it and say, "Oh, I remember you." But the truth is that it never fully goes away. It gets resolved at that level of beingness, at that level of leadership. And then the universe says, "Oh, great. You are doing such an awesome job. Let me dump all this new stuff on your plate." And then the story comes up again.
Yes, a
One
new
of the
level of the
things
video game.
Oh, yeah. And especially in today's world, these cycles are speeding up. They're going around and around, and it is challenging to integrate learnings at the speed of change. And I think that is what is
Yes, it
being
is.
asked of us now.
There's something I would love to share, Shannon, about the imposter syndrome.
Of course.
There's a way in which, and I too kind of smiled when you said you reach the place of leadership,
Mhm, mhm.
because I agree with you. My life has shown me that we do spiral, and so here's the inquiry that I'm in. When I see myself going into what I call imposter syndrome, like the stories, the doubts, what I become aware of is that I am at the effect of a patriarchal conditioning where I'm seeking approval. I call it my addiction to approval. I think that is kind of underneath most of what we've got going on in our Western culture, and so then, and when we are, seeking approval from others, our focus is here. Our focus is right up here in our head. And so when I find myself there and I can bring myself back into, okay, yes, that's happening. And also, I'm here to be in service to whoever is in front of me, right? I'm here to be in service. Then my focus comes out of myself. I kind of drop into my heart. And then my focus is not just simply on this insular, tiny identity, it's more on the we or the collective. And then I can step into the flow that Rachel was talking about.
I
Yeah.
love that. It's things like this that and this is part of the reason I got my degree in psychology, right? Because ideas like this fascinate me. I understand that it might surprise somebody for me to say what I'm about to say, but I don't feel like I've ever felt the imposter syndrome. Now, am I ready for this? Am I equipped? XYZ? Okay, that's a question, right? But I'm not supposed to be here. Thankfully, that is not where I live with it. We could talk about other things, right? And so when people say the imposter syndrome, this is why I have the question. But where I go with it is that God qualifies the called. He doesn't call the qualified. He will get you ready for what he asked you to do, right? Now, some she might say different things. I have questions. There's a reason I'm not a pastor and we're on a podcast, right? And it's Wednesday night. Um, but I know as somebody who never had enough to get there, like the RA and I wouldn't have gone to college if it wasn't paid for all the way. Thankfully, I'm smart and I had the grades and I knew that I needed that, right? Um, but the up level, and every time get to another level, there's more stuff that I have to get through. I really think about it like a video game that helps me gamify it and kind of jump out of it to trust that I'm gonna be taken care of. Okay, like Rachel said, I've seen this before. What did I do last time? What do I need to do at this level? But this is what I've needed to add in even before I go to the community in my workflow to make sure that I'm operating from a full place before I get back to the we melody that you were talking about. Okay, I'm here to be of service, right? As women connected in wisdom, we're taught to go back to the service, go back to the pour. Before I can pour, I need to make sure that I'm not dry, right? And Melody, you know about Shalo Glow. So, Rachel, I have Shalo Glow, which is the shea butter company with oils and sugar scrubs, right? My thing before I start helping the pharmacists and everybody who's going to get these pills, which is a lot of people in our nation, right? Is my skin dry? If my skin is dry, I might need some water. And I'm dehydrated probably right now still, but we'll continue to work on that, right? And my hands might need something on it. And my hands I do a lot with, right? We content create, we market, we file taxes, we crochet, we cook, we do all this stuff. So am I okay? Are my 8 dimensions taken care of? And if not, can we address it? And then the community that's beside me, my inner circle, my sphere of influence, what do we need to continue our collective goal together? And so I love how you ladies talk about systems, and I would love for you to go back more into it because Rachel, what you were talking about with the stories popping up and the up leveling, it is a new environment, right? You're even though I do believe I was born a leader, so I hear what you ladies are saying, and I felt the call and I wanted to lead. And as a young woman now in my 30s, coming up and reaching leadership levels for the first time, and now fluctuating. And I understand what you ladies mean. It fluctuates, and somebody might see you as a leader or might not. That doesn't change where you are. Melody, I would love for you to speak to the systems because it is my systems that I build in each environment that help center me so that I know I'm taken care of and that I'm not coming from a victim mentality. I am coming from a place of being taken care of and able to process the information so I can ask balanced questions and make sure that I'm not gaslit and pigeonholed into being crazy because something else is going on. But it's okay, what's the next question? I can face anything. What do
Right.
you ladies say to those things?
Well, I will just say about systems, I
Yeah.
feel like just like we need good systems to care for our spaces, like I have a system of doing the dishes after every meal. I have a system of doing laundry twice a week. There are systems. Um, I also have, I guess you could call them systems or rituals for self-care. I take myself outside every morning barefoot in the sunlight and call in the directions, the elements, and the archetypes with which I work. I ground myself to the core of the earth, to our planet, and to the land, and to the higher dimensions. This is the like my daily self-care system. And I have systems that connect me to my colleagues, to my clients. There's um, a frequency within which, I mean, I know that I need time alone, that I regenerate through time alone. But I also know that if I don't get enough contact with like minded sisters, whether I'm listening to the podcast or I'm doing something else, I'm gonna go. I'm going down, and
I
I need
understand.
that regular contact. So those are some of
Absolutely.
my systems.
I love that. What about you, Rachel?
I'm a big fan of modular systems,
Mm,
as in my life doesn't have a specific schedule. Every day I do this, I do and that
mm,
sort of thing.
mhm,
I have 5 kids. I will say off the bat, I have not raised them all from diapers.
mhm,
It's 1 biological, 1 adopted, and 3 bonus.
mhm,
There were complications after the biological one, so we just ended up collecting all of their neurodivergent and genderqueer friends,
mm,
and they are cascading into 22 this year.
mm,
It's interesting trying to maintain control over the things that are beneficial to have discipline about, and knowing where to be flexible And when is it best to go with the flow? I talk about modular systems because I sometimes feel like my life is a series of nested if-then statements. It's like, if this happens, then we do this, but if this over here happens, then we do something else. And by having ideas like, okay, here is the situation that is, what fits into that place? So I have
Yes.
ideas of what could fit into that place. So when
Mhm.
that place opens up, I know what to put into it.
I
Does that
understand
make
what you're
sense?
saying. It does
Uh,
because it's the pivots, right? And thankfully, I'm a band
yeah,
nerd, so the pivots helped me. And for so long, Rachel, I was stuck on this mindset of only dead fish go with the flow. And that's so abrasive and like, oh my goodness, and Melody, I
yeah.
think you've heard me say that and you laugh like that like every time, right? Because it's so I'm like, Shannon, are you okay? And no, I was not okay. But I was not thinking about it in like a really dark way. I was thinking about it specifically and not going with the trends. I'm not just going to do everything because everybody said it. But what that perspective was limiting is you're fighting with nature. If your home is natural material and wants to partner with you, go with the flow. Like you fighting it is not going to help you get where you need to be, and so what I hear you saying, Rachel, is with 5 kids and these different contexts and situations, know the system and know how to pivot quickly, because if you're not flexible, if you don't bend, you might break. Be
Yeah.
flexible. That's what you want to be.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it really, you talked about how you looked at things before.
Hmm.
So much of life is about learning and about the journey.
Yeah.
For myself, my journey has been, I started out wanting to orchestrate every last little thing. I
Mhm.
thought that if I couldn't control it, then I would die.
Okay.
I had to move out of that into questioning, okay, what if I don't try to control everything
Hmm.
and just kind of see what happens?
Hmm.
Can I survive?
Hmm.
From there, I went into exploring, okay, what would complete surrender be like?
Hmm.
And really diving into my intuition with that full presence of just accepting steps as they were handed me.
Hmm.
And now I am coming back to the discipline and creation aspect, but I am coming into that, what can I control and create?
Hmm.
Not no longer from a place of survival and fear,
Hmm.
but from a generative love. How can I contribute to the evolution of the world?
Let them know, Rachel.
Yeah. But I
Let them
had to go through the process
know.
in
Mhm.
order to get to where I am now.
Yes, and because we're told to serve, right? I'm here to serve, and the women have been so responsible for the household management. And what Escaping the Quicksand was sharing is the percentage of the GDP, right, that is made up of household spending. So that means this is our responsibility. And so when we're trying to cope from the pivots and deal with grief and all this stuff, it is easy to, I think, fall into that seat of, and I have to control it, or if not, I don't know what's going to happen, and to just go with nature. And when you're there, maybe it's too big for your body to handle. And what we need to do, take off those socks and go outside and get some water.
Yeah.
you know and then let's look at it again. And I've been talking about the processing table. We have to unpack what happens. We deal with things at a certain time, stay legally compliant, things that are asked of us as leaders and people who run businesses and homes. So I would love to talk about not just the simple daily things, but some of these pivots when there's grief and stuff goes on. I love how you say a modular system. I love, Melody, that your systems came from you guys moving all the time when you were growing up, because that faster pace that Rachel was talking about is what I want this show to help our listeners grow their capacity of how to maintain their wellness and pivot a little bit quicker because it's difficult with the weight that everybody has right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I think this is really important, and both Rachel and I have experienced sudden traumatic loss.
Mhm.
And what Rachel was saying about in those moments, surrender is necessary because we cannot change that my son died in an accident. Rachel's husband died. We can't change certain things and we can't control them. We have to simply feel them. Um, and so that fine, I don't know if you would call it a line, that fine dance that we do when we are surrendering to something big and painful that has happened or is currently happening, like the death that's happening in our country of the old trust and the old structures, right? Um, Rachel, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about this dance that we really all need to get good at. What to do when we have sudden loss?
With my husband, as you mentioned, he had a sudden heart attack, and he had asked me to call 911 and brought him outside. The EMT said, "Let's get you to the hospital to run some tests." And I was in the truck, and I was going to meet them at the hospital, and I admit my very first response when he asked me to call 911 is like, "Don't you even." We had we had a very challenging relationship, and we had just come back to each other. The kids had just graduated high school, we had started dating again, and it would just seem so unfair. But while I was in the truck, I started realizing it wasn't my choice. When you talk about surrender, something my mother taught me is if you can accept the worst possible scenario, everything else is easy. I asked myself, if this is the proverbial it, who would I need to be to get through it? And because I asked that question, when I found out that he had actually made it as far as the ambulance and then dropped, I was already in a place of grace. I wasn't in story. I wasn't worrying. I was simply present and overwhelmed by love and so many feelings that have no names. It's kind of like the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. It is simply the experience of it. And I truly felt, going back to something you had said, Shannon, that everything that I had done, all the psychology I had studied, all of the personal work that I had done, had been preparing me for that moment so that I could get myself and the kids through that. And then that experience has been preparing me for what's next, which prepares me for what's next and what's next. What I found, I've been studying the stories we tell ourselves for decades. What I have found is that stories can be incredibly powerful in understanding and making sense of our past, in creating visions for our future. But there comes a time when we need to let go of the stories entirely and simply be.
I wonder, so first, let me say thank you so much for sharing. And I hear what you're saying. What's your husband's name?
Sean.
Sean.
Yeah,
Mm.
I have, let's see if put it on the camera. I keep this as kind of a talisman. This was his,
Hmm.
he was had a very strong affinity with owls.
Wow. And I was listening to the Owls this week, and my alma mater, Kennesaw State University, is Owls. And so I was like, shout out to the Owls, listening to the Owls this week. And here we're talking about Sean.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
I just wanna have
Please.
a little, um, Melody has a couple of amazing meditations,
Mm,
and a few weeks, maybe a few months after Sean passed, I was in my garden, and I was listening to one of her Connect with Your Purpose meditations, and there is a point where she invites you to imagine yourself surrounded by your spiritual advisory team.
mm,
And I'm listening to this and I'm on it's the audio is on my phone. And as soon as it says, imagine that you're surrounded by your ancestors or departed loved ones, my
mm,
phone immediately switched to my husband's ringtone.
mm.
I thought that was really cool.
Wow, Rachel. Wow. I just want to say that the way you describe what happened to you, um, and there's just two things I just want to highlight. And one is that you were able to do what I call meet that moment well because you were not resisting what happened. You were in that place that I call surrender or flow. And the other thing, I think it's really important um, for us to recognize. And thank you for sharing the ringtone. You hadn't shared that with me before, and I just love it because that which we have loved, those beings, those people, those animals, that land, those experiences that we have loved that are now maybe that feel like they're maybe gone from us, they still exist for us and in us. And if so, my recommendation maybe to others is to do what we can do to meet the moments of our loss and our grief so well that we can accept them as they're happening, that we can be in the the experience that you called the Tao. I call her grace. I call it grace, um, where you are so aware of the love holding you up to meet the moment. And then we can, after, connect with those loved ones and the experiences that we can't physically hold anymore. Um, the medicine of the relationship I have with my son Logan, even though he's been gone for, it will be 29 years in August. Um, he was 17 when he died. I was just 42. I was young. And but the medicine of the relationship that we have together still, that is ongoing, that continues to teach me and expand me, um, is the expansion of my consciousness that I have been called upon to do to stay in relationship with this dear child who was also my teacher. Um, uh, that medicine expands with me as I mature. And that this is not something I speak of much, but I believe this capacity to meet our difficult losses well, that Rachel has just described, ripples out from us and is part of what makes us beacons of love, beacons of light, leaders, if you will.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because when we talk about authenticity, for example, right? I'm about to reach an age threshold where people feel like they understand my wisdom. But, "Oh, because you're this age," is so far has been, "Oh, you're so young. How do you understand?" Well, life will do that. When you pay attention, you're in the just and so this thing when we talk about, like, age and there's this story that, we talk about old stories, right? That you haven't gone through anything if you're not 18. It's like, "What do you mean?" Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I
I love
actually
that. The medicine expands. What were you gonna say,
yeah.
Rachel?
I was one of the reasons that I was able to meet that moment well was
Mhm.
something I learned from my eldest kid,
Mm,
because they had done something, they had hurt a friend very deeply, and they regretted it so much, and they found themselves in a spiral, just saying, "I shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have done that," and then they stopped and acknowledged, "But I did." And it's such a simple shift and so incredibly powerful that it actually helped guide my way whenever I found myself sinking into it shouldn't be like this. It allowed me to acknowledge, but it is. And what do I do with the is?
mm. And holding that, I think, is one of the keys for what we're talking about, you know? How do you say, "This is what's happening. I'm not a victim. This is still happening, though. And how can I be victorious through this happening for me?" And it may come back around, and when I say, "Wow, I did that," wait, we're not mad about it anymore. We walk through that, and I forgive myself again. And
Yeah,
we keep going on this level because, oh, I have to forgive myself again on this level. Okay, I forgive myself again. Let's
Yeah,
keep going because we're not choosing to be that person today. Let's
yeah,
go ground
yes,
ourselves. Let's see what we need right now because this is where you are. How do you keep and in addition to the video games, I talk about the lily pads. We always wanna know the whole path. You're on the lily pad that you're on. This is where you are. The other one will show itself, not until you're all the way almost on it? So just know that that's how life is and to enjoy the journey, and if you know what the end is, you might be there and that might be the end, so find the joy in the journey and you'll get
yeah,
what you asked for and wish that you had what you had when you were there. So I'm
yeah.
so thankful for you ladies sharing everything that you've shared with the way that you've been and now. And I see you with something that you want to say, Melody, and I would love to talk about old stories too to help us unpack that a little bit more before we go into wisdom and action. What do you have?
I just want to make a connection
Mhm,
between what Rachel was talking about with, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish it wasn't this
yes.
way. And it is to
Mhm,
what is happening in our country right now.
okay.
So, whatever this side of the political spectrum we might be on,
Mhm,
we can probably look at what's happening and be very unhappy with um, what's happening in Washington. And there's only so far that we are going to get in our own consciousness and in our communities and as a country by saying, well, this shouldn't be happening. This is not what a democracy looks like.
mhm,
Resist is not going to help us.
mhm,
And I do think it's important for us to say, and it is happening. And so we can feel like a victim. because we get to, like, we pay taxes, we vote. This is not what we wanted, any of us. But okay, now if we can up level the victim to survivor, okay, I'm in something that looks more like a fascist dictatorship, but I'm surviving. I'm gathering community. I'm working to be of service to, I think the next level up from survivor is creator. And I think we're being called upon at this 250th year to create something different and perhaps even more aligned with the values of all are created equal than what we had before. And we can grieve it. I think we need to grieve it. I have a grief altar that has images of things you would recognize as belonging to our nation. And but I feel like we're in the stage collectively where I hope we're moving out of, oh, I wish this wasn't happening to, and it is.
Right.
And let's move out of surviving and into creating.
Mhm.
Well, I keep thinking of your experience with the hurricane
Oof.
and how everything was so washed away and community came together.
And community didn't matter whose political signs were out front. Everyone was working to keep everyone alive. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Yes. And that's what I think about women connected in wisdom. And I thought about it Wednesday nights growing up. I was at church. I was at church 3 other nights. It was 4 days a week. We would go karting and friends was one day. That was like Girl Scouts, a female group. And then we had the church and all this stuff. But Wednesday nights now, for the last 5 years, has been us having these conversations because it might not always be the people in the physical church. It's going to be people different places, and there's a list of people that need these resources and to hear these stories and these positions that we've talked about finding ourselves in life happen to everybody. And so um the creator part is funny. I was getting these new headphones earlier because I broke my other ones. And this is something that's like, we talk about the world and everything going on, not important. But the color scheme ladies with the pink headphones and the yellow drapes, and then my outfit was like, what's going on? All right. So I was trying to find these headphones, and I go to Best Buy. I got these smaller headphones, and I was thinking about if it would fit my head or not, and talked to Marshawn, a gentleman that helped me, and got to the car. And I said, I think they should fit. And they fit. And guess what? They had no microphone. And I said, baby, I'm not just a consumer. I'm a producer. I'm a creator. I need my mic. I went back in. Marshawn told me I had 15 days. I didn't even need 15 minutes to know that this was not the right one, So, yes, yes to the encouragement to be creators. I've been so happy to have this conversation with you ladies because it has been heavy for the last 4 years. Rachel, this article, your last article that you shared, you were part of for um, this information you were sharing on LinkedIn was talking about the victimhood mentality, but also, what was it talking about, Lord? Let me see if I could pull it. Actually, do I have it up here? I think I have it up
I
somewhere.
babble a lot on LinkedIn, so I don't know which one it is.
Oh, no, you're fine. I should have it pulled up. Let's see if I can land this point before we go to our wisdom in action and talk about. Let me see if it's on one of my many tabs. No, it's gone. Um, but let's go back to what you said, Melody, about the creator, survivor, and victor, because what I wanted to share was this is what it was talking about: sharing from a scar versus a wound. Is how we've talked about it on Women Connected in Wisdom, right? Excuse me, sharing from a wound instead of a scar. And what we talk about is a wound is healed, right? And a scar is something that is still healing. What this article actually said, how it posed it, was a lesson versus a wound. And I like that better because it was talking about vulnerability and how to share online as business owners, and the way that now it's a question of possible oversharing to share these
Yeah.
stories that are very heavy to try to then get clickbait when I thought that we were meeting each other on a heart level, and it kind of feels weird, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why I love what we're talking about, from the victor to the survivor to the creator. I love the encouragement to help everybody address what's going on, but then also in partnership with your community, be the creator of what you want to see now and reclaiming those old stories and writing the story that you want to say today for your legacy.
Yeah, I think I may know which article you were referring to. I was referencing something talking about how to be vulnerable
Yes.
when talking about things, and
Yeah.
one of my main points is don't use vulnerability if you want people to feel sorry for you.
Mm,
Use vulnerability to encourage people that, yes, we can get through hard times.
right. And I've had this question with the podcast, because Christine and I talk about a lot of stuff. Melody, the ladies, like, this is what we talk about. It's like a weekly basis, so it could feel like that. So as a leader, I've been very intentional and introspective of how we share and what it looks like. And I've shared since my mom passed away in 2019 that at a certain point, I'm going to start getting away from sharing that so much. Right. Not because I was ever sharing it for a certain reason or to overshare. I think that I always did it in a tasteful way as a leader, but because sharing it as an example so much, being my only example, may center it too much. Right. It's not the center of my identity. And it might also, to somebody who's listening to a lot of the episodes, since we're on 224, like, let's talk about something in addition to this moment that happened, because there's other things to continue to anchor stories in and continue to talk about. So it was really helpful, that article.
Well, that's like a perfect example of how
Mhm.
I see integrating grief.
Mhm.
Because in my experience, grief doesn't go away, but your
Right.
life continues to grow.
Mhm.
Sometimes I imagine a tree that has been struck by lightning. And yes, it has that scar, but the tree is still alive and it keeps getting bigger.
Mhm.
How do I make my future bigger than my past?
Mhm. And continues to grow. I'm taking notes. I love that. I actually had a tree outside of our old apartment, and there was like twin trees on either side of our door when we look out. One had got stricken by lightning and continued to grow, and the other one had not, right? And they're like different colors. So it's like my twin trees I used to look at. And I understand what you're saying, and I love about trees that, one, the storms and the shaking helps them grow and become more grounded, right? And then we know that trees are also, if not just as tall underground, even more so, twice as how big is the root structure under the ground. So you may look hurt because this grief happened and this storm happened, but we can continue to grow. And if it's not post traumatic stress, but post traumatic growth, even be stronger after it, like you're saying, and continue to get bigger and wider. And so that was my point earlier when you were talking about the stories, is when I think about epigenetics and how our bodies remember, and even if we have processed and chosen to heal from and choose beauty and joy in our stories, it's part of us. So if I can't let go of any part of my story because I am all the versions of myself cumulatively, then I choose to grow from it instead of letting it weigh me down. If I can fly today, I'm going to fly. And if as I get older and transition, I start to run and then walk and then crawl and then hang on by my crochet needles, whatever I'm doing or whatever, God has what we want for ourselves, like, but to grow from it is what I'm hoping that this conversation helps people do. Cause I know it's been a lot for everybody this year. Yeah. So through that, and the grief and the joy and the beauty that we look for, what I would like to end with, and we do for every show, are our action steps that we're doing for ourselves to maintain our wellness. Because it's little things every day. So when you ladies think about your social wellness, you've given our ladies and our listeners a lot of action steps and a lot of good things. I wouldn't even call them nuggets because they're bigger than nuggets. You've given them a lot already to work with this week. what are you doing for yourself, for your social wellness, that helps you stay intentional about maintaining your wellness?
Oh, I know. I mean, it's one of those simple and necessary, and everybody knows the whole you need to fill your own cup first. I love going for walks where it's physical moving my body, it's outside. I created a 10-minute walking meditation for myself that really helps me notice these things, and I used to go for walks 2 to 3 times a week. Nowadays, I'm sometimes going 2 to 3 times a day. It just
Mm.
clears
Yes.
out the system and gets things moving and helps put things in perspective. It can be so easy to get overwhelmed by this and that and the other, and when I notice, "Hey, the birds are still singing, and I can feel the sun on my skin," and even if it's not what other people would think is a beautiful day, I'm still alive, and I am filled with so much love and gratitude. It recenters and grounds me, and it makes it easier for me to see my next steps. Whether it's physical or metaphorical, all of a sudden, all of this awareness that is innate to me is able to come to the surface because the chitter chatter just dissipates, and what's left is what matters.
Yes. I 100% agree with you. And I'm
That's
so glad
beautiful.
you said that because I've been like, we talked a few podcasts ago about micro dosing joy. And so I've had, right, these little alarms going off, and everybody is at work like, what do you mean it's time to play? What are you talking about? Like, we're working. And I'm like, I'm going outside. Okay, y'all can, I have 3 minutes. I'll be back. Okay. Um,
Sharpening the saw.
hello, and it feels like, it's so interesting to me catching myself outside 2 to 3 times a day, but with the increased speed, it makes so much sense. So I appreciate you for sharing that. Yes. Melody, what about you for your wisdom in action? Would you like me to go next, or do you wanna go next?
Well, I can go.
Okay.
I was reminded as we were talking when Rachel brought up what happened after the hurricane in my community, and I've written about that, that I started at the end of last year, I started compiling a list of prepper resources that every one of us needs to have a water filter and some food and just the things that we might need. And I grew up in a family that was very disaster prepared. And um, and so I shared at the last homeowners meeting, I shared a list of current resources. Now, some of the companies I've purchased some of these preps from have gone out of business, but I shared a list of resources and I said, in the new year, let's get together, those of us who are interested in being more prepared. And because of I've been on a journey of eye surgeries. I'm 2 surgeries into a 5 surgery experience to regain my vision, my clear vision, and I haven't followed through. And just as we were talking, I just had the feeling of, oh, I want to connect with my neighbors and do a dessert buffet and talk about preparation. So that's my course of action. Yeah.
I love that. So are we saying desserts and disasters? Are we doing like a like, what is the RA event planner is like, what are we I like a dessert buffet. I like that.
I like
Okay.
desserts and disasters. That sounds good.
Make it a little sweet, all a little, reality
Yeah.
preparedness. I
Yeah.
like it. And it's fair, we get there. I'm definitely in a place of being right there where you're at, of things I need to catch up on. This is where I've been, and it's understandable. And I've had to give myself a lot of grace and have some more to give and more work to do. And that's okay. Like, that's life. That's the journey. So I hear what you're saying. And thank you so much again for being on camera and our amazing co-host today, because blue light
Well,
is a serious thing, you know.
well, thank you, Shannon. It's been so good to be back with you. I agree with what Rachel said about your
Mhm.
voice. I could listen to you for hours. You have
Mhm.
such a beautiful radio voice.
Thank you so much. And we're going to keep using it, and I appreciate you ladies giving me the opportunity to use it and for joining me. Um, and it's a pleasure to be able to get us these resources. Because some it feels like a hurricane. A lot of people are under the quicksand. There's all this stuff, and Rachel's resource will help you. Her website, Melody LeBaron, and her spatial clearing and organization, even the way to think about it. I think about you every time I think about the top left corner of a space. That's where the financial wellness and, all those things help us stay centered and in this place of presentness so we can enjoy our life, be aware of what's going on, and not create stories that are not happening and be prepared for the ones that are. So, thank you so much, ladies. I'll tell my wisdom in action before we get out of here. Let's see. Social wellness. We've definitely been going outside. Let's see what I want to say. Mm. So, this is what I'll say, because I'm in a season of setting up a lot of systems and one of transition, right? And I love alliteration, if you ladies couldn't tell by what I just said. And I love these F's that you gave earlier, Melody, the function, the feel, in the flow. And that is something that I work into the physical systems, the social systems, everywhere. It's not just for me in a manipulative way of what does Shannon need? And this is what I want. And it's about to be, what's the function? It's going to build win, 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 win situations. You know what I mean? It's going to feel good in our bodies, hopefully. And we can get feedback on that and see what happens from there. And then the flow of it, if the flow is stopped, we can acknowledge that. If it's moving, let's acknowledge that and see what we need to have for the next function, for the next step, for everybody to be good. I think that is what I'm actually, I'll say, excuse me, that is what I am actively working on this week for my social wellness. Hmm. Yeah. Do you ladies have anything else you would like to share with our listeners for everything that we have talked about today? I'm going to go ahead and have all three of us up here on the show for the end of it.
Okay.
Uh,
So let's start here, Rachel. Can you please let our listeners know where to find you? You've shared so much of the details that you walk people through when they work with you. Let them know if they need more, where they should go first.
um, I recommend going to my website, which is The Fullness of Your Power.
Hmm.
And the name is based on the idea of when you stop fighting yourself, you might be amazed of what's waiting to emerge.
Hmm. Absolutely will be amazed. Yes, especially the catalyst and facilitator. I love that, Rachel.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because it's the catalyst and facilitator is interesting. I the title first came to me when I was back in university, which was 1990.
Hmm.
It was aspiring catalyst and facilitator was the title I gave myself. I've taken off the aspiring because what I have found is I don't fix anyone, I don't heal anyone, I don't do anything other than hold space and reflect people's innate magnificence back to them. Because we've learned to discount ourselves, and I like reversing that because people are pretty dang cool.
We are, aren't we? Yes, I understand. And I feel like all three of us are that's what I mean when I say advocate for your intentional wellness. You
Yeah.
will have to do the work. I can remind you that you're amazing and you're not the things that happen to you, they happen for you, but it's going to be you to choose to let the sugar and the fries go and to choose the healthy things, and the proteins. So, Melody, what about you? Can you let our listeners know how to find you if they need help with their space and their transitions?
Yeah, sure. So my website is transformingspace.com. And people they can sign up for those visualizations that Rachel was talking about. And they can also reach out to me if our listeners want that PDF with a list of resources that you might need in a disaster, and the companies that are selling those preps.
Yes.
I'm happy to share that with folks if
Mhm.
they want that. Yeah.
Can you send it to us and we'll put it on the show
Oh,
notes?
yeah,
I would
sure.
love that because like a
Yeah.
gravity-centered water filter, like all that, yep, let's look at the list, sun I think I looked at your list when you posted it on the story, so let's have it so if they listen to this episode, they can click straight into it.
Okay.
I
Great.
love it.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Well, okay, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. I hope that it helped your social wellness, that of yourself and your community. We'll see you live at 5 next week for episode 225. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. Thanks for being here. Peace.